It is a great honor, Dr. Nick Wampa, and privilege for you to break from your busy schedule in the middle of the week to be here with us today. For this, we are grateful, and we say a big thank you to you and your team. Please allow me to let those to whom this may be news know that World Animal Protection is a global animal welfare organization with over 50 years experience in safeguarding the lives of animals around the world. Our vision as an organization is a world where animals live free from cruelty and suffering. We believe that a sustainable future of the planet can only be achieved when both animals and humans are part of the solution. Ladies and gentlemen, to advance our work in promoting the welfare of animals around the world, including Africa, and ultimately achieve a sustainable future for the planet, we at World Animal Protection have recently formulated a new global strategy to help us deliver system change and systematic change by seeking to overturn entrenched global systems that cause anguish to animals. Consequently, this will help us achieve our strategic goals of ensuring farm animals live a good life, and by transforming global food systems that cause them to suffer, and by also stopping wild animals from being treated as commodities whereby they are exploited cruelly, by changing the systems that allow it. So in summary, we are actually focusing on two issues: food systems, for reasons that have been highlighted, and wildlife, for reasons that have equally been highlighted. Our new strategy, therefore, is a new world for animals, which recognizes the alarming scale of deepening crises that animals face around the world, thereby demanding immediate action to be taken. Our animals, ladies and gentlemen, are no doubt facing a very serious crisis, and we need to take immediate action. Our new global strategy, A New World for Animals, certainly deals with that in many ways. Ladies and gentlemen, we are elated to have allies such as the African Union Inter-African Bureau for Animal Resources. Dr. Nick, as head and representative of the principal institution that is responsible for managing animal resources in Africa, we are greatly honored by your presence. We kindly ask you to make the presence of your institution even felt better at this point in time. We do recognize that indeed you have so much to deliver, but your presence here will send a very strong message that indeed animal welfare is very important to the development of the Africa agenda. With those few remarks, please allow me, sir, to welcome you to address this gathering. Thank you very much.
Good morning, all. Good morning. Please allow me to apologize for this sudden change. It was due to conflicting meetings. We have a GSTAT meetings this morning, and it is a very important meeting, the inauguration of the ASF Standing Committee, and I didn't want to miss this occasion on account of the importance of animal welfare to AUIBA. Not only that, on account of the support we've received and the collaboration we've had with World Animal Protection. So it's imperative on me to ensure that at least I attend this launch. Even if it's just for 5 minutes, I just wanted to show my face here to show that not only African Union, but Africa truly appreciates the work of World Animal Protection. So permit me to deliver this brief speech. The board members and executive management, World Animal Protection, the director and staff of World Animal Protection, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to observe all protocol. Many thanks to Mr. Tennyson Williams, Africa Director for World Animal Protection, for your kind regards for AUIBA and for giving me the honor to be the chief guest in this auspicious event. As an organization, we strongly believe in the power of partnerships as the engine to drive the transformational agenda of the animal resources in Africa. AUIBA's partnerships with the member states and REX, as well as technical partners such as the FAO, OIE, ILRI, research and academic institutions in Africa, and the development agencies such as the EU, USAID, and of course, animal welfare organizations like yours. May I also make a special recognition of World Animal Protection's continued support of the African Platform for Animal Welfare since its establishment launch in 2018. On behalf of AUIBA, I say a very big thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it would be fair to give you a brief history of how animal welfare came to be incorporated in the work of the AUIBA, especially because the crucial role that the World Animal Protection, among other organizations, not intentional, on promoting principles of animal welfare and its sorry, I skipped, among the organizations played. Although its work had positive impacts about the World Animal Protection now, although its work had positive impacts on animal welfare, AUIBA was not intentional in promoting the principles of animal welfare in its animal resources strategies, policies and programs until 2014. No, animal welfare is a global public good and is integral to responsible animal resources development. It was therefore incorporated in the AUIBA 2014-2017 strategic plan. To operationalize this strategic thinking in the AUIBA 2014-2017 strategic plan. To operationalize this strategic thinking, in 2015, AUIBA held a consultative technical workshop and came up with an issues paper which, among other issues, identified the need to establish a multi-sectorial platform to promote animal welfare development in the continent. This issues paper informed the first Continental Animal Welfare Conference that was held in November 2015 and brought together CVOs from 27 member states, REX and animal welfare organizations to discuss the animal welfare agenda in the continent, including compliance with OIE animal welfare standards. One of the key recommendations of the conference was the establishment of a task force to drive the animal welfare agenda in the continent and to implement the recommendations of the conference, including that of APAO. The chair to that task force was AUIBA, and the one was the vice chair. The task force was later led to the development of AUSA and the Action Plan. The AUSA and Action Plan was by AU Heads of State in 2018 as a blueprint informing the development of the animal welfare agenda in the continent. As you can see, WAP has committedly worked with us through this journey, and it continues to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, World Animal Protection stood with us during the establishment and strengthening of the APAO and its Secretariat through the secondment of the staff to AUIBA to support its secretarial functions. It continues to be very committed to support us in the implementation of AUSA in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, the name of the strategy we are launching today is A New World for Animals. There is a deepening crisis facing animals around the world. I cannot help but appreciate how this resonates with our mandate as AUIBA, where we are Specialized Technical Office of the AU to spearhead the development of the animal resources in Africa. The question, what is the crisis facing animals, resonates in my mind. As a vet, issues like the psychological and physiological stress animals lives are subjected to, and the pain or loss of life the animals are exposed to. This is seen as hunger, disease, habitat loss, in terms of shrinking space for animals through deliberate confinement for economic gains, the genetic manipulation in an effort to increase productivity, which produce breeds which are highly vulnerable to welfare issues. Genetic manipulations for productivity increases vulnerability to disease, temperature, exposure to toxic plant materials, fatigue, and many others. The global redistribution of animals by man in an attempt to improve their productivity, often in disregard for evolutionary ecological adaptation, is another driver for vulnerability to welfare issues. We have received evidence about animals in disastrous, man-made or natural incidents where inadequate or no intervention by man happens. This causes devastating harm to the animals involved. We have received reports about the abusive use of animals in entertainment, extraction of ingredients for traditional medicines, work, research, transportation during relocation or for commercial purposes. All these, ladies and gentlemen, point to an urgent need to address them, given that indeed animal welfare is central to the development of the animal resources sector. For this fact, AUIBA spearheaded the development of the Animal Welfare Strategy for Africa, AUSA. We are confident that with partnerships from World Animal Protection, we will be able to secure a better lives for animals and improve our planet and people. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to echo the sentiments contained in the World Animal Protection Strategic Plan. The world is changing. Africa is rapidly emerging as the new terrain for rapid industrial growth due to its huge untapped agricultural potential, friendly climate conditions, tolerant socio-political aptitude, rapidly improving infrastructure, and a rapidly transforming economic disposition of the communities in Africa. This poses new threats to the environment in terms of biodiversity and pollution, to animal welfare, and to public health. In this regard, it is desirable to ensure that dialogues around an assurance of the protection of animals and the environment are prioritized. AUIBA believes that our success rest on these dialogues being inclusive and evidence-based, so as not to be perceived to be counter-progressive. Investments in building resilience and coping mechanisms for the vulnerable in society must be made. The focus of to shift from short-term, unsustainable socio-economic and socio-political gains that may come at great long-term cost to interventions that ensure short and long-term sustainable benefits. This requires a well-coordinated, holistic, multi-sectoral, one welfare, one health approach, and interventions to take into account the interlinkages and relationships between animals, environments, and people. AUIBA, in accordance with its mandate, is happy to coordinate this approach in Africa. I am also aware that World Animal Protection Strategy for 2021-2030 captures the animal, environment, people issues. AUIBA was deeply involved in the recent adoption of the resolution that sought the UNEA to request UNEA to generate a report articulating the nexus between animal welfare, the environment, and sustainable development. Its adoption comes at a good time when you are launching your strategy. With active implementation of World Animal Protection's 2021-2030 strategy plan, I am confident that you will find ways to invest in the realization of the aspirations of the resolution and together realize a better world for animals. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening to me, and with these remarks, I welcome you to join me to launch this strategy. May God bless you all, and may God bless Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. Please, let's give the Director another clap. That is excellent. We have captured a lot of messages from his speech, and I'm sure this is going to be good grounds for the discussions we're going to have as we go towards the launch. May I please invite Mr. Tennyson Williams to invite the presentation of the video.
Thank you, Dr. Baka. Thank you again, Dr. Nick Mamba, Acting Director, African Union Inter-Africa Bureau for Animal Resources. Ladies and gentlemen, because our chief guest has to attend to other matters, as we said earlier on, there is a slight adjustment. So to that effect, his representative will do the honor of launching the strategy at the appropriate time in the course of the program. Because our chief guest will have to take leave of us to attend to other business. So can I respectfully request you to allow me to accompany him to leave us, and then I come back and continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tennyson Williams. So within this set break before Mr. Tennyson Williams comes back, we find that we have new arrivals in the room. Could we please have the microphone secretary so that they may introduce themselves?
Kindly tell us your name and the organization you come from.
My name is Anita Shagaki and I work for Vashandra Kadyafa.
Thank you very much. Your neighbor is here also.
I'm Stephen Owino, AUB. I represent INC and Go Africa. I'm here to present our MD, who is not able to attend the function, and just to reiterate that we are with you in this launch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, let's know by raise of hands the persons who have not introduced themselves. I know Prof has not. You will bring the mic to there.
Thank you, Dr. Mbaka. Thank you, Dr. Mbaka. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience and understanding. Protocol demands that you show respect to your visitor, especially here in Africa. I want to start by recognizing and appreciating all of you on my behalf and on behalf of World Animal Protection, Board of Trustees and Management, and my team here in Africa, which is a very good team. At this point, can I take the moment to let you all see those who are behind our success? If you work for World Animal Protection, if I sign your appointment letter, please stand. If you earn salary from my signature, can you please stand? Thank you. So you see these great guys, they are responsible for the success that we enjoy. Please have a seat. I am honored to provide that leadership, which is so reflective of our achievements. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, my session, which is this one, will constitute two elements. Number one is to bring to you a 3-minute video voiced over by our Chief Executive, Mr. Steve McIvor, which tells you a little bit about who we are, but offers context to the new strategy. It does two things. It says a little bit about who we are, then offers context to the new strategy. So for 3 minutes, I indulge you to that video. Thank you very much.
At World Animal Protection, we know that every animal counts. We're a global animal welfare organisation and have been campaigning for over 50 years to end animal cruelty. We work to achieve global change. Every day, billions of animals are experiencing unbearable cruelty. We tackle the root causes of their suffering so that we can make the biggest difference to their lives. We give a voice to the voiceless. Our world is changing fast. As people face urgent issues like the climate emergency and depleting natural resources, we give animals a voice and ensure their needs are met because we all call our planet home. Right now, we're prioritising issues where change can transform the lives of the greatest number of animals, overhauling the global food system. And ending the cruel exploitation of our planet's wildlife. We know that the fate of animals' lives rests in our hands. Our passionate teams inspire and mobilise individuals and organisations to create change. We support local and global movements that are fighting for a better future for animals. Our knowledge and expertise give us a powerful voice at the most influential levels of government and business, where we establish animal welfare as a global priority and a local concern. Though the challenge is great, our determination is greater.
So, as I said earlier on, the video we just watched offers two things. It says something about us and offers context to our new strategy. Let me assist in reminding us of certain important lines in the video. The video says, among other things, right now, as an organization, we are prioritizing issues where change can transform the lives of the greatest number of animals. That is our own conviction. You may disagree with us, but we ask you to be patient with us because we can only do so much as an organization. And in that prioritization, we've done a number of things. Some of you who may have come along with us for a number of years, you will have known us for doing certain things, for working on certain issues. But this prioritization has led us to make certain tough choices based on our capacity, our capability, and the justification that we believe that animals' lives matter. So, we have exited two program areas that we used to work on before now. For some of you who know us,
recording in progress.
For some of you who know us, we have been working on animals in communities, specifically dogs and rabies. I want to say to you, since this strategy was put together and up until now, we have made the bold decision to exit that area of work. And that is not because the lives of dogs don't matter anymore. But we believe, as I said, we can only do so much. Similarly, we exited the area of animals in disasters. And that is not because animals that suffer disaster or as a consequence of disasters don't matter anymore. But again, we had to make tough choices based on certain things. But because of our continued commitment to animals, we ensured a responsible transition. We did not only transition, ladies and gentlemen, we did it responsibly. We had experts on board the animal protection team that was busy delivering in those areas. Those colleagues are no longer with us, but we ensured that we instituted an entity that now takes on board what we have been doing in those two areas. For those of you who have been and continue to be in the animal resources sector, I'm sure you will know a name like Julie Kimaro will be familiar to you. A name like Emily Mudoga will be familiar to you. So those two ladies are now the directors of this entity that is responsible for taking those areas forward. The entity that they lead is known as Action for Animals, for Protection of Animals in Africa. Action for Protection of Animals in Africa. Julie Kimaru and Emily Mudoga are the directors for that entity. Unfortunately, they are not here now. I would have loved for them to say a word or two, but I hope that this information will be useful to all of you. If you continue to work in those two areas, our appeal to you is to consult them, but if you need to reach them and you have difficulty, you can still come to us, and we can always organize for you to meet with them. Having said that, the new focus of the strategy that we are about to launch today, ladies and gentlemen, as the video suggests, are derived from two things. The need for us to overhaul the global food system. We recognize that is very important because a lot of animals suffer as a result of the need for us human beings to have access to food. So that is one. The second is the need for us to end the cruel exploitation of our planet's wildlife. For those two reasons, we have decided they will constitute our focus for the next 10 years. The fate of animals' lives rests in our hands. When a lion feeds on a gazelle, no matter how that lion does it, it is not cruelty. Cruelty exists when you and I behave otherwise, for our own selfish reasons for the most part, but for other reasons. And that is why we say in that video that the fate of animals rests in our own hands as human beings. If you go to the Bible, it's very clear that God gave man dominion over everything, including animals. But God did not say we abuse them. So even in biblical times, what we are talking about now had never existed. But we are challenging ourselves that we can do better because animals' lives matter. We establish animal welfare as a global priority and a local concern. It is global but local. And hence sometimes we use the terminology local. Because it is global, it is also local. And that is why we have presence in Africa, including other continents. Because the issue is a global phenomenon. I want to end with a note of optimism, however. A note of courage and a note of hope. Again, in the video, it is clear that though the challenge is great, we believe our determination is greater to give animals the opportunity to live good lives. That is our determination. Please, if you disagree with this position we've taken, we respect your position. But we want you to reason with us. Come along with us and let's make this planet a better place. If anything, we need animals more than animals need us. We human beings, we need animals more than animals need us. I would like now to switch to some of the details in the new strategy to help you understand where we've come from. And of course, later on in the presentation, my two colleagues, Dr. Victor Yamo and Edith Kabesine, who lead those two goals on behalf of all animal protection, will give you more deeper insights as to what we are looking at over the course of the strategy. So please, can I request studio or the technical team to give the strategy itself. Our strategy, ladies and gentlemen, as you may have noticed or heard, it is titled A New World for Animals. What is that new world? Do you share in that new world? What is your position in that new world? What is your contribution? So here it is. From 2021 to 2030, we have challenged ourselves to take the bold step, realizing that this is a tough journey, but with a strong determination. It will take us 10 years to make some of the changes that we expect. Because what we are talking about is a deep-seated challenge, even as we believe that a new world for animals is an imperative. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen, you will see on the screen that we say there is a deepening crisis facing animals around the world. Who disagrees with that? And it's not only the fact that it is deepening, the scale is alarming also. The scale is alarming. So there are two issues there that we have highlighted. The crisis is not only a crisis, it is a deepening crisis. But in addition, we say the scale at which this crisis is deepening is at an alarming rate. Whether you are in the media, whether you are in the restaurant business, whether you are from its senior fields, with all due respect, whether you are from civil society, whether you are from government, that is a reality in our opinion. And this is based on evidence. This is based in science. This is not only emotional. Somebody might be sitting there and say, oh, Mr. Williams, you are only just being emotional. But it is underpinned by science. So, ladies and gentlemen, because we have a growing population as human beings, urbanization and all the things that come with urbanization continue to make a serious contribution to the problem. Our investigation points to the fact that about 1.6 trillion sorry, that's too far for my eyes.
Sorry.
Please permit me to make some adjustments. I'm a very young man, so my eyes are very alert.
Yeah.
When you work with very young people, they assume the leader is also very young. So anyway, let me bring a hard copy closer to me. Those of us who are on the 5th floor and 6th floor, I'm sure you can associate with my problem. Don't mind them, they will be on the 6th floor like us. Just give them a few years. So, our growing population, urbanization, and increasing economic prosperity are driving greater demand for animal products and placing more pressure on animal habitats. Who disagrees with that? I'm sure nobody. If left unchecked, it is not only that reality exists, but the other thing is, if we don't check that, this demand for animals and their scale of suffering will continue to accelerate, because population projections are very obvious. The African population is projected to be what by 2050? Africa alone.
2.4 billion.
Yeah. So imagine, to be able to meet the demand of that population from farm animals alone. Imagine Kenya alone. Who will tell Kenyans not to feed from protein, animal protein? It's going to be hard. But we have to make tough choices. Not only Kenya, the world population. So if we don't check it, if our habits don't change, it will be an issue. Underpinned by that, we say 1.6 trillion. At least 6 trillion wild animals are killed and they suffer through people's actions every year. That is based on science. More than 70 billion land-based farm animals are consumed annually. 70 billion land-based. It's not only the fact that they are consumed, the way they are treated to be consumed is what is the issue here. The way they are treated in order to be consumed. They don't live good lives. We all know that. Most are clearly confined to industrial low welfare systems. I challenge you to make time, even if you go online, and see some of the industrial systems. For example, in China, how animals are produced to meet our needs. You will be shocked. That is the least I can say. You will be shocked the way animals are treated to meet our demands. All the restaurants around the world, all the homes around the world, to feed us, animals pay the price, unfortunately. A new world for animals, for us therefore says, together, if you go to the next slide, studio. A new world for animals says, together we will change the way the world works to end animal cruelty and suffering forever. Together, we will change the way the world works to end animal cruelty and suffering forever. Whether you are in government, whether you are civil society, whether you are in the church, this we have to do together. We are also saying that we as an organization, we believe that leadership has to be provided to be able to achieve some of these. And we are at the forefront with humility taking the challenge to provide the leadership that this is required so that we can make the world a better place. Again, you may read that and think that this is being arrogant. We are not arrogant by any means. We are just being bold with humility. And therefore we say, under the global leadership that this requires, that there is no organization better placed to lead us through this deepening crisis than World Animal Protection. Please, we say that with humility. We don't say that with any arrogance at all. We have every respect. That is why the statement that precedes this statement is that together we will change the world, the way the world works, to end animal cruelty and suffering. We need ANAL, we need the judiciary, we need the media, we need everybody, because this will require all hands on deck. The professors at the university, I think we need to look at the curriculum because we need the students and the institutions also. So all hands on deck. And it is not only for a moment, it is forever, because the ever-increasing problem requires a very committed and a systematic way of looking at this. Next slide, please. I'm just trying to pick some of the topical issues. So, as I said at the beginning, my two colleagues will be coming to talk to us about some of the details that underpin the new focus. On that slide, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to pay attention to then what constitutes our new focus. Two goals will underpin our focus for the next 10 years. Having transitioned the work on dogs and rabies, having transitioned the work on animals in disasters, which by no means suggests that we have sorted out those areas. No, we have made a tough choice. This will be the focus area. Number one goal from now to 2030 will be ensure farm animals live good lives by transforming the global food system. There is a lot in there. If you work on AMR, for example, you have a place in there. If you are in the feeds business, you have a place in there. If you are in the supermarket business, so almost all of us, including ordinary consumers, have a business in there. I'm sorry for using the word ordinary. It doesn't mean that consumers don't matter, because we have to make those choices so that the providers know that we are becoming a more conscious population. Goal number two, stop wild animals being cruelly exploited as commodities. Animals are not mere commodities. They are not. They are living, they are sentient beings. And there is science that points to that. Therefore, we must change the systems that allow animals to be seen as mere commodities, to be seen and treated, not only seen, to be seen and treated as mere commodities. They are not. Africa prides itself with its wildlife. We can make alternatives, propositions as to how visitors, tourists, entertainment can still benefit from what these animals offer without necessarily abusing them, without necessarily letting them suffer. So this is what we are saying. So what are farm animals? If you go to the next slide, studio, there is a statement there which we have put, and we say we believe, again this is based on science, that farm animals deserve good lives, free from cruelty and exploitation. For those of you who may have read the 5 freedoms, you will subscribe to this statement. If you haven't, go online, find those 5 freedoms. These were not designed by World Animal Protection. These are global benchmarks for animals' good life to be realized. Please look for those 5 freedoms and try to understand them. Again, I'll leave Dr. Yamo to speak to the details when it comes to farm animals and what we want to do. So I'll go to the next slide, which is about wildlife, and just see the topical statement we've made. Like farm animals, we have said for wildlife, we believe that wild animals have a right to a wildlife. That is why they are called wildlife, wild animals. Yeah? Wild animals deserve a life, a right to wildlife. They cannot be in the hotel. You cannot create the conditions that exist in the wild, in the home, Even the attempts to try and put them in zoos, much as we try much as possible to get them to the natural environment, our zoos have limitations because those animals are wild. If you go on vacation in Asia and you enjoy elephant ride, think for a moment what it takes to allow you to climb an elephant to offer you a ride. This is a wild animal. Something must have happened at the back end that you are not aware of. For that animal to submit to you, to allow you to have a ride, think for a moment, and we have investigated this. There is a lot that goes behind the scenes for an animal to offer you ride as a tourist. We are not saying you should not enjoy nature, but there are other ways that we can do this. There's a lot of trade. Removing the African grey parrot from the forest in Africa to serve as exotic pets in other parts of the world. We have evidence that almost 60% of the birds that are put on the plane to land wherever they are going, they die because of the conditions under which they are put. Is that right? It is for all of us to judge. We also recognize that there could be crossovers between these two goals, the farming goal or the farm animal goal and the wildlife goal. For animals produced in industrial systems to be fed, the feed comes from where? From mass agribusiness establishments, maybe in Brazil, the US, China, etc. So large chunks of land are required to cultivate soybean, for example, which means therefore animals will be displaced for that feed to be available. So we have also recognized that there is a crossover between those two goals, and we are looking into them. We are not against agribusiness. What we are saying is that we should be mindful in order to sustain these industrial systems. Where do we get the feed from? Even in Africa, most of the feed that we need to have in our systems, in our establishments, perhaps will come from Brazil, where large chunks of land are put under cultivation to be able to feed industrial systems. So we really need to have a slightly different look at all of this. So we have made attempts to look at the connections between these two goals. And please, let me be clear, we are not against any of the businesses that have investments in this area. We are calling for a new way of doing this so that we have a better world, because the world we live in is an interconnected world. So our approach that we have suggested, just to close this session and invite my two colleagues, we have said the scale of the challenge is immense. Only by working together can we turn the tide. Only by having you on board, only by appealing to you, only by working together can we turn the tide. Because no one entity, no one establishment can fix this problem. And therefore we need people power. People power has to underpin our actions. When you walk into a restaurant in Nairobi, something has to click as you make a demand for a chicken to be offered to you. And that particular thing that has to click, what will this chicken have gone through for it to offer me food? It takes the consumer, and therefore we will be able to ask for change in the production system. If the producers are keen on becoming successful going concerns, they will listen to the voice of the consumers. That's where people power can be derived from. So these are things that are requiring some real shift in the way we are thinking. And this is where I would like to end, presenting the highlights of the new strategy, the thinking behind it, and with humble submission. Take a moment to think about what I have said. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tennyson Williams deserves a lot of clap than that. Ladies and gentlemen, after Mr. Tennyson speaks, I find it difficult to speak because he speaks emphatically and completely. What I gather from him reminds me of one fact, ladies and gentlemen. Let us remember that mosquitoes, consumers, they bite us, but they don't hit us. Mosquitoes do not negligently or deliberately make us suffer. But then also remember, they are mosquitoes, they're not human. Point number 2, Mr. Tennyson Williams and World Animal Protection, they are telling us that World Animal Protection does not say do not consume or use animals. They are telling us to protect them from suffering. And by the way, we are not mosquitoes. All of us can tell when we make an animal suffer. Thirdly, he has reminded us that we have scientific evidence that shows that making animals suffer exposes us to danger in terms of health, in terms of wealth creation, in terms of food security, in terms of climate change, and so on. All those things have been captured by Mr. Williams. He has emphasized that taking care of animals translates into taking care of our welfare. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, animal welfare is the business of everybody. We need to do something to protect animals. And ladies and gentlemen, the next step we are going into, we're going to listen to some experts here. One of them is Dr. Victor Yamo, who is the farming manager at World Animal Protection. And the other expert we're going to listen to is Madame Edith Kabesine, who is the wildlife manager. After that, we will be seeking to get some feedback from a few of us, whereby we would want to see what opportunities do we think we can find from this strategy. From whatever we do, from that task we have of protecting animals, what opportunities do we see here? And to emphasize again a word that Mr. Tennyson has said, Mr. Tennyson Williams has said, World Animal Protection recognizes opportunities in partnering with us. What opportunities do you find in the strategy? And then after that, we will go to launch, to the launching ceremony. So without further ado, may I kindly invite Dr. Victor Yamo to come and address us. Dr. Yamo.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. I think I will just quickly rush you through what our Global Food System Campaign is all about. As you heard, I'm Dr. Victor Yamo, the Farming Campaigns Manager at World Animal Protection. Next. That's the strategy, and I think Tennyson has made a lot of inroads into it, which then makes my life easier, because then mine is just to highlight a few things about the food systems. The strategy has two strategic visions, and I think the important one, which I will allude to, is goal number 1, to ensure farmed animals live good lives by transforming the global food system. I will leave my colleague Edith to then do goal 2. So as introduction, and these are some of the things that Tennyson has already talked about. We have a growing population, there's urbanization, there's increasing prosperity, especially in places like here where we have a growing middle class, which then is driving demands for animal products. Our addiction to meat, okay, my screen has gone. So I might need to look at it from somewhere. Okay, they're all gone now. So we are just saying that there are processes that we need to be looking at. There's that growing there's that growing population and urbanization, and in the Kenyan context, for those of us who are here, you realize that when we then put together 47 counties and started building, you can see what has happened in some of the counties, and we've ended up losing agricultural land for that matter. We are saying that farm animals are reared and transported and slaughtered in horrendous conditions, and for those who are around here, you know what happens. Chickens on motorbikes, pigs tied behind motorbikes, and this whole system is then driving climate change, pollution, antibiotic resistance, and destroying wildlife habitats, and that is something we share with Edith. But for us to understand then, farm animals are actually sentient vertebrate animals, and sentient from the village I come from simply means that they feel, they experience, and they can actually have some emotional connection with what's happening around them. And so for the farming global food systems, we are looking at beef and dairy cattle, meat and egg laying chickens, pigs, fish from aquaculture. You realize that ocean caught fish is actually wildlife because they're free in the wild, they're not part of farming systems. And it's interesting to note that over 70 billion land-based farmed animals are consumed globally, the most of that being chickens, if you count one by one, because we consume about 60 billion chickens. And I can see my friend from KGB, it means we are slaughtering about 2,000 chickens per second. That's how we looked at it. Of course, the other animal that is consumed a lot is pigs. There are about 1.5 billion pigs, and that is interesting and important to look at. The vision of the global food system is a world where respect for animals and nature sits at the heart of our food system, which is equitable, sustainable, resilient, and capable of feeding the whole world. And Tennyson alluded to the fact that we are about 1.2 billion people on this planet, on this continent. We'll double by 2050 to about 2.4 billion, and it behoves how we then feed that population, and we'll be looking at some of those things. To transform that system then requires that we ensure that factory farming has no future, and we'll explain what factory farming is. To ensure that we are catalyzing a food revolution, we need to think differently on what we're eating and how we're eating it. And for me, the most important one is shifting financial flows, because funds have been put in certain spaces that are then funding other things. These three interventions are complementary, and we will be looking at each one of them and giving you highlights of what we are looking at. Now, this is where I get to Tennyson's space. I can't now see what is there. But in this slide, we'll just put there for you to then see the whole farming or food systems campaign in one slide. And I will not be reading it at the top, at the outcomes, the three outcomes that we're looking at. The vision is somewhere in the middle there, and the problem is at the bottom of the vision. At the bottom are the drivers of the problem, and then the three interventions that I will speak to as we go along next. So the key focus areas are three: no future for factory farming, where we're looking at bringing or changing or shifting how we're doing farming, especially intensive farming systems. We're looking at also going to look at food revolution, which is to support food systems that are sustainable and are driven by high welfare production system. And last but not least is data finance, where we're looking at where is the money coming from and what is not easy funding. And I know future for factory farms or farming, I then need to define factory farming for us to understand. Factory farming is basically husbandry practices that does not recognize or acknowledge the sentience of the animals. In these cases, we tend to have a lot of animals in enclosed spaces where we have negative animal welfare outcomes, and the environment and the labor impacts are also significantly negative at certain levels. It drives, next slide, it drives a destructive sort of production system that then needs to look at, we need to look at. It has unacceptable practices which include close confinement, and confinement is a big thing, especially for broiler chickens. And at the bottom there, we've shown you layers in battery cage systems, and for those of us who've been tracking, you know what has happened in certain people have started taking serious action around battery cage system in production systems, and we'll discuss that later. It also looks at early weaning, especially for piglets, and that then has an impact on their capacity to grow as we expect them to grow. It also has a lot of those environments are poorly ventilated. We have painful mutilations, and the fast growth rate is something that is being discussed, especially for broilers. And at certain levels, we're even starting to say we need to cap the rate at which a chicken grows, because beyond a certain rate, it's actually negatively impacting on the system. And because of the poor welfare in that system, we tend to then use a lot of antibiotics, and that then becomes the connection between antibiotic use and production systems. Under No Future for Factory Farms, the campaign outcome is actually to ensure that social acceptance and trust in factory farming is eroded in recognition to the damage that factory farming is doing to the planet, animals, and people. And when the pandemic broke out 2 or 3 years back, a group of scientists, ILRI, which is in the House, UNEP, and a series of others, did a study, and you can see the report that is highlighted there. In the study, one of the things that came out is that factory farming has been responsible for pandemics that have 50% of the pandemics that have occurred between now and 1940. And that then makes it critical that we start looking at the production system and how we are managing. Things like swine flu are from factory farming. Things like bird flu are all from factory farms. Factory farming is also laying the foundation for a devastating health crisis known as antimicrobial resistance, and there's certain things that we're doing around that. Under that No Future for Factory Farming, we have 2 objectives. There are 4 objectives, but as Africa, we're looking at 2. One is to increase public opposition to factory farming by 50% by exposing factory farming's contribution to antibiotic resistance and pandemic risks. And that's why we have a research manager, Dr. Mwinde. And along that things, we have been looking at collaborative research to expose AMR and pandemic risks from factory farms. Last year, we launched a study around supermarket meat testing that showed about 33% of supermarket meat, chicken, and pigs are actually contaminated with superbugs. And superbugs are essentially organisms that are resistant to 3 or more antibiotics, according to World Health Organization. This year we are doing another study that will be launching in the subsequent months, and just to whet your appetite, please stay connected to us. We're also doing public engagement and media engagement to just release some of these reports so that we are able to sensitize and mobilize people around corporates. And as you can see there, that was a media engagement that we were having. Objective 4 is around building government support, and that's why it's important to have the DVS and government in these spaces. Because we are trying to ensure that ultimately we have bans around prophylactic use of antibiotics, because then that drives certain things that are critical. Our chief guest talked about the animal welfare strategy for Africa. That's the cover page, you can see it there. And so around the objective 4, we are looking at working with national government and regional economic communities and AU to drive a process of developing national action plans around antimicrobial resistance reduction. We're also looking at working with them to develop legislation that then promotes prudent use of antibiotics as part of the process. You realize in some countries, because we are an African office, in some countries the national action plans are in place. The Kenyan, for instance, has run since 2017, but it's due, the action plan is actually due for review this year, and it's something that we'll be interested in getting around and engaging. One of the big things that we're looking around here is developing a moratorium against factory farming that we will be presenting at COP27 with the other partners. And COP27 will be happening for the first time, I think, in Africa, in Egypt, later in the year. And so that's some of the things that we're looking at, and we're hoping that you'll partner with us in doing. Next. I think then I want to just say that all this work that we do around antimicrobial resistance is driven by an understanding, a global framework for stewardship that was developed in 2017 between the tripartite, OIE, FAO, and World Health Organization, which recognizes that increased animal welfare as a prerequisite to good farming practices and reduction of antimicrobial resistance. And that, again, is something that we are ready to work around. The second trend around what we are looking at in the food system is food revolution, or driving a food revolution. The outcome here is 2-pronged, and I will explain why. One, we are looking at reducing the total global consumption of meat. And the reason why we are looking at reducing the total global consumption of meat is because of the impact it has on the environment. When you see Amazon burning, it's because you are clearing the Amazon forest to grow soya that then goes to feed maize. But that is not an African problem. I think we are not consuming enough meat. So the second bit of it is to increase production and consumption of humane and sustainable proteins. And there's a whole list of humane and sustainable proteins, and you can have a discussion around that next. And just to show you that, so that you understand, I borrowed something from Nation Media House that then tried to put together. On your right, for those of us who are facing the screen, on the top right, you see that globally, in the Americas, they're eating about 86 kilos of meat per person per year. Compare that to the African consumption, which is on your left, about 14 kilos per person per year. Kenyans tell me they eat a lot of meat, but when we put you on the international scale, you can see Kenya only eats about 14 kilos. And when I say kilos of meat per person per year, it's total meat consumption. It is beef, it is chicken, it is pigs, it's sheep and goats, and in the middle circle there you can see where the problem is. We're eating more of beef and less of the two big globally consumed meats. We're only eating 2% chicken and 2% pigs. That's part of the challenge that we're having. So essentially that's why then there's that dichotomy, why we are saying in certain places we'll be looking at reducing meat consumption and replacing it with humane and sustainable proteins, and in certain places we'll then be driving a process for humane and sustainable proteins being delivered. Next. So under that farming campaign, Objective 5 is to build private sector support for higher welfare farming by securing farms. And farms, which is Farmed Animals Responsible Minimum Standards, is a standard that has been developed by us and a series of global organizations that quickly states what are the minimum standards that a production unit should have. And around that, we will be engaging corporates, both the producers and in the retail sector, to then have them adopt farms as the basics around which they procure meats. If I am a supermarket, what are my procurement processes? Does it include animal welfare? Does it look at responsible use of antimicrobials, which then drive processes around food safety? We're also going to continue engaging publics, because for us, public and our programs are driven around public engagement, so that publics then make certain decisions that push corporates and governments to do the right thing. Especially in a year like now, where we are headed to election, it's a time to engage corporates to push the voters to push governments to do certain things that we're looking at. And of course, as we said, we are big on online and offline activations, and so we are looking at things like media engagements, Twitter conferences, etc. to drive that process. Next. Just for us to understand what high welfare production systems and to then bring the farms into some sort of perspective, farms looks at certain things. One is close confinement, and we're saying that the stocking density for broilers should not exceed a certain number. In fact, in Europe, they've gone as far as legislating and saying you cannot keep broilers for more than 30 kilograms per meter squared, which simply means in the Kenyan context, if your chicken is growing to 2 kilos, then you cannot keep more than 15 broilers per meter squared. That's what you're looking at. It also looks at providing the birds with some hours of darkness, about 6 hours of darkness, which then allows the bird to assimilate and gives you better FCR. We're also looking at light intensity within poultry units. We're also looking at stocking density, which I've talked about, and also providing an enriched environment. Traditionally, what we've done is to give chickens or pigs a barren environment that does not engage them. Remember their sentience, and freedom number 4 is about allowing them to exhibit their naturalness. And so we need to have things like deep litter floor that allows the bird to scratch, that allows them to peck and do things that they're supposed to do, or bales that allows them to patch. And I know within Africa, some of the organizations we've worked with in the last 5 years have started adopting some of these things. I've already talked about the slower breed, and it's something that globally is being looked at. And so that in a context is what we're looking at in terms of high welfare production systems. Objective 6 is about building government and private sector support for protein transition using public mobilization. So it's about getting governments to then make certain commitments about transition. What do you want people to eat, what kind of food, and how do we then work with the people to develop that food. Around that, we have been, for the last 2 or 3 years, part of the business benchmark for farm animal welfare, which we transitioned out of, and we're now doing what is known as the pecking order. For the corporates in this room, we will be ranking you towards the end of this year, a process that starts round about now, to look at your animal welfare policies, your food safety policies, your policies around use of antimicrobials, and then rank you. The ranking that you can see there highlighted is for last year or a year back when we ranked the QSRs. I work for a British organization. What we know as fast food restaurants, they call them QSRs, quick service restaurants. And it's something that we are not only going to be ranking the 8 top brands as we did last year. For the year going forward, we'll be also ranking African brands, so that we also look at how our brands compare to the international standards, and how the supermarkets compare to international standards, and how our producers compare to international standards. So that's something that you should be aware of. It is harming. Don't say you are not forewarned, but we'll engage you formally around that. Next. Last but not least is fairer finance. And I've put that slide there, again borrowed from the internet. How many of us know Africa Development Bank? It's at the center of transforming Africa. This year, 2013, just go back a bit. This year, their strategy is up for review. They have a strategy that runs from 2013 to 2022. So part of what we want to do is to look at their ECG policies, economic, social, and governance policies. How do they then relate to animal welfare and animal welfare matters? How do they disburse funds? Do they disburse funds that then propagate the destruction of the environment? Do they disburse funds that are not sensitive to the realities that we're dealing with? And so that's why we put there. So Africa Development Bank is going to be one of the big ones, next slide, that we're looking at in terms of finance. And the campaign outcome for finance is actually reduction of public and private finance from factory farming, so that they fund sustainable proteins. I have worked in a bank, so I know how some of these things happen. So Objective 7 is looking at the development bank, and as you can see, we are looking at 3 major development banks, the Africa Development Bank and Asia Development Bank, because that's where a lot of this money is going to. And trying to look at the projects that they're funding to ensure that the projects are being funded that are sustainable, that are sensitive to the environment, sensitive to One Health and human health. Essentially, that's what we'll be doing around Objective 7. Next. Objective 8 is to constrain expansion of factory farms, but now securing commitments from private finance. So one is development banks, which are funded by international monies coming from various places, but the other one is looking at private sector financing institutions. And one of the things we are asking them, as I said, having worked in a bank, is when you're giving credit to a farmer, is it sensitive to the fact that the farmer must maintain high animal welfare? It's a discussion we began having with some of the banks locally. We're also going to be looking at, again, around there, the animal welfare, the animal antimicrobial use, and economic, social, environment, social, and governance policies that these banks have, because then it gives us opportunity to engage them and drive that process. And finally, we are sitting in Nairobi, Kenya, as I conclude. I don't know how many of us heard about something called UNEA 5.2. You know, when I ask this question, Kenyans give me a very funny look, like one marker is now giving me. Because we use a lot of our time and phones to look at other things and not the real things that are happening in our backyards. For those who don't know, United Nations Environmental Assembly, UNEA is about United Nations Environmental Assembly, and they actually recognize that there's a connection between animal welfare, environment, and sustainable development. Next. And so what I wanted to show is part of the resolution. They are acknowledging that animal welfare can contribute to addressing environmental challenges and promoting the One Health approach. They are noting that the health and welfare of animals is linked to human health, which is very critical. And at the bottom, they are acknowledging that all these things are driven by a body of science. So what you're saying is scientifically proven, and it's something that then we need to look at. In conclusion, they then asked the Director General for UNEP to then work with the tripartite to develop a program or to put together a paper that they will be discussing next year around the nexus between animal welfare, environmental sustainability, and human health in a One Health context. And that has already happened and has started to happen. As you can see, a few days ago, they then moved from being a tripartite to a quadripartite so that the four organizations then work together. So my challenge to us is that if an environmental body has begun to recognize that animal welfare is critical and important, where are we going to be in that continuum? Especially if these things are happening in our backyard, sitting in Nairobi and hosting UNEP. And so the challenge for us is then, as we then deliver the global strategy around food system, is for us then to take you along in the journey. We'll be in different spaces, but we want you to engage with us and ensure that you're part and parcel of that delivery of the food system strategy into 2030. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to for Dr. Victor Nyamo. When he mentions UNEA 5.2 and justice in the House, I find the need for us to talk about what he will. And I see Prof in the House, we went a long way to have that thing together and to have that resolution adopted. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I will not take much of your time, but knowing that Victor worked with him, Victor known him for many years. And Victor has got so much information in his head that he could not share it enough here. So you see, speaks very fast. What Victor has told us, I'm sure I've gotten most of them. I mean, almost everything he has it, but he has a lot of information, this man. And one of the things that he has underscored, I'm re-emphasizing what Tennyson already told us, that the problem for animals arises from our demands. And when he talks about factory farming, something comes to mind. You find that modern lifestyles, including the settlement systems, end up creating big demand for food. Part of that food is meat and eggs. And therefore, what causes factory farms? It is a commercial interest to increase production to fulfill that demand. The problem then comes in because those people producing those animals in those factory farms or the systems they use, it is the end that justifies the means, the quantity, with total disregard of the experience of those animals. And ladies and gentlemen, in the process, animal welfare is violated. And what is animal welfare? Why are you talking about animal welfare? Simply put, that is the well-being of that animal. It implies that we agree if the welfare of the animal is violated, the animal is not well. In other words, it gets sick. What happens? It requires medicines. Now, if it requires an increase of medicines, what happens? The continued use of medicines has shown us that continuous use of medicines causes drug resistance to those medicines. So what happens eventually? We have incurable diseases in those animals. Economic loss for the farmer. But then, the critical issue is there for us. About 70% of the diseases that animals suffer are the same diseases. We share the same organisms with them. Which means that we share the same, medicines like we share the same pathogens, the same germs, the same disease-causing organisms. So if we have incurable diseases in animals, we have incurable diseases in human beings. Incurable means you get sore throat, you die. Your medicines are not going to work. You get some respiratory problem, you die, because the medicines are not going to work. You get stomachic issues, you die, because medicines are not going to work. That's the issue that Dr. Nyamo is encouraging us to be mindful in mind, and that's what Tennyson told us. That's what the director of the told us. That's what the CEO of animal production told us, that we take care of animals as a way of taking care of human interests. Not much time. I will now to ask the next expert to come here and share her experience and her information with us. Edith, can you see me?
I'm also on the 5th floor, so I think as a contingent measure, I move with my laptop. Yeah, so once again, thank you for being here, and of course, looking forward to hearing from me. My name, once again, Edith Karesime. I work as the Wildlife Campaigns Manager at World Animal Protection. I sit down in Kampala, but of course I'm always in touch with friends and colleagues in this beautiful country. So I'll be taking you through the second part of our strategy, and that is Goal 2. Goal 2 is about stopping wild animals from being cruelly exploited and overhauling those systems that allow it. Of course, my colleagues have gone through the details in terms of the strategic level. I'll go now into the details concerning that Goal 2, which is wildlife. So basically, my presentation will cover those areas. I'll highlight the problem facing the animals. I kind of try to go deeper into what my colleagues, especially Tennyson, has taken us through. I highlight the drivers contributing to those factors. I also go through what is our vision and our goals, having we talked about the problem and the drivers, and then I will highlight the key interventions that could create the systemic change that we want for wild animals, and then I will highlight our ongoing campaigns and what is really going to be our focus for the next 3 years. And then, of course, the last bit will be part of the questions, which I believe will be another session. I told you that I'm on the ground on the 5th floor, and that one also looks a bit small, but I'll endeavor to read it. Drawing from our global strategy, I would like to reiterate that wild animals are facing a growing threat of cruelty and abuse because of human action. And as my colleagues say, this is really reaching catastrophic levels just because of the way we have chosen to exploit or use or interact with wild animals. We've destroyed their habitats, and of course, ultimately, we know we are also entering the climate change crisis. So all these issues are really interlinked. In terms of what this means at the global level, if we talk about, for instance, wildlife trade alone at the global level and how it's impacting on wildlife, global estimates are that between 30.6 and 40.2, I mean 42.8 billion US dollars are generated from wildlife trade on an annual basis. So you can imagine if you're going to translate that in terms of the number of animals that are affected, or that are consumed, or that are abused, in order for us to generate that amount of income, which of course we need for our socio-economic development. In terms of scale, experts have told us that up to 1.6 trillion wild animals are killed or suffer through human action every year. These are only wild animals. And then, of course, if you go down to individual species, different types. Of course, the figures are also there. For instance, we know that from the inception of the CITES, which is over 4 decades, from 1975, for instance, we know that over 12 million African grey parrots have been traded. This is a combination of both wild, trafficked, that is illegal and legal. You can imagine where those animals have come from. Certainly they've come from our forests in the DRC, they've come from our forests in West Africa, they've come from our forests in Kenya, they have come from our forests, of course, down in Uganda. I know, for instance, in Kenya, some of those species are no longer easily found. For instance, African grey parrots, it's very rare to find some of those species. In some of the countries, say in Ghana, West Africa, in Togo, some of those species have actually dwindled, almost extinction. So that is what it means. In terms of the drivers, what is driving this? Of course, is the demand from human beings. First of all, as human beings, we believe we have a right to exploit wild animals. And I think it is something we've carried from generations before. And we continue to carry those beliefs that animals are there for us to exploit, abuse, misuse. And some of us even go to the extent of even misinterpreting the verse that my colleague quoted in the Bible, that God created these animals and gave us dominion over these animals. We go to that extent. But then we forget that in the other parts of the Bible, we have a responsibility. I'm not here to teach Christianity or the Bible, but I know most of us believe in the Bible, and we tend sometimes to quote those verses when we want to justify some of these actions. The other driver of this problem, why we are facing this crisis, is the business of exploitations. Of course, we have our corporates, our friends sitting in this room, and usually when we look at these animals, we don't see individuals, we don't see sentient beings, we see money. We see money. That is another driver. That we see animals as commodities, we see money. If I open a safari company, say take people to Masai Mara, I'm not seeing the elephant, I'm seeing money. I'm seeing money. So the business of exploitation is something that we want to tackle. Animals are not seen in terms of their value as individuals, but in terms of the money that we can make out of them. I also want to jump to the next driver, which is our friends, the policymakers. I've been kind enough this morning to say that they enable this exploitation, but I think they are accomplished in this business. Because you sit at the tables, you sit in forums, you sit in spaces where you make decisions for these animals. When you give permits to hunt elephants, when you give permits to hunt rhinos, you are the people who are holding the power, meaning that the lives of these animals are within your hands and you are making decisions for them. So those decisions commodify wild animals. We look at them as commodities from which we can generate money to feed our economy, because we need education, we need health, we need infrastructure, we need development. And this is where we look, without minding that these are sentient beings who occupy this planet as us. And then, of course, there is pressures on habitats as one of the drivers. And as my colleague in farming said, we are encroaching on these habitats and we are destroying them because we need space, we need to produce food, we need infrastructure, and all this is impacting on the well-being and the welfare of these animals. I just want to give you a few trends in terms of what the situation looks like. And of course, this is not exhaustive. For instance, if you talk about the African lion, which is one of the most treasured animal on this planet, on this continent, already lions are extinct in around 26 countries across Africa. They have gone extinct in over 90% of their former range. And of course, experts explain that we have around 20,000 lions remaining in the wild. And then, of course, elsewhere, put together, they are not more than 40,000. So you can imagine. And then we have one country which keeps almost a third of that population in captivity, just to be slaughtered for bones, to be used in traditional medicine, especially in Southeast Asia. I mentioned the African grey parrot. As I said, it is already extinct in a number of countries. And in Kenya, you tell me, I'm told a few in Kakamega, I don't know whether they are there. Our colleagues from KWS can tell us that. But those are some of the trends if we come back home. And then, of course, the pangolin, as we know, has joined the list of the elephants, the rhinos, and currently the most traded wild animal in Africa, and most trafficked mammal. And then, of course, the ball python, especially from West African countries, is the highly traded reptile on this planet, especially exported to Europe and America for being used as baits, and of course in fashion, and so on and so forth. You can't believe that we expect also our invertebrates in huge numbers. And if you mine scientist data, you'll find that some of the species as small as the emperor scorpions are also traded in really huge numbers. So really, that is where we come from when we say the animals are facing a crisis and we are responsible. So our vision, therefore, looking at those problems and the drivers and the challenges ahead of us, our vision is a world where wildlife has a right to wildlife, and where these wild animals are free from all forms of exploitation and are thriving in habitats that are humanely managed. Because I know in wildlife management, sometimes we manage our habitats in ways that do not give that humane treatment to wildlife. For instance, when we construct roads that pass through important biodiversity areas, we are fragmenting habitats for them. So that is what some of those statements are about, if we come down to reality, what it means on the ground. Therefore, our mission as the Wildlife Campaign, or DOCET, here in Africa, but also globally, we will be working to stop wild animals from being well exploited and to be treated as commodities. Next slide. How shall we do it? We have come up with a number of interventions which underpin our strategy and how we will deliver on that goal and vision. Those are too small, but the first one is that we will disrupt commercial exploitation. So we will disrupt commercial exploitation, and we are saying that by 2020, we will make commercial exploitation of wild animals and their habitats unavailable and unacceptable by disrupting industries that do harm to these animals. And we will give those industries, those corporates, a route out of exploitation. In terms of areas of work under that intervention area, in the past we've been focusing on addressing harmful entertainment, so we will be continuing to do that. For instance, in Asia, we've been working in India and other countries, Thailand, Pakistan and other countries, where we have been trying to stop elephant rides. So that work is going to continue. But in terms of the African continent, we have been working, especially down in South Africa, to end the captive lion breeding industry and our animals not medicine campaign. Under this new strategy, we will continue to focus on that area to end the exploitation of lions as medicine. I must say and commend the South African government that actually in May last year, they made a commitment to close down the captive lion breeding industry in that country. And they are currently in the process of developing a policy and a white paper before they can move into legislating so that this ban is now enshrined in the law. We will be working with them to make sure that that process is concluded so that the almost 12,000 lions that are currently held up in very horrific farms, venues in various parts of South Africa are completely closed down, and then these animals can be given a humane way of ending their lives so that they become the last generation of lions born and raised and exploited in captivity. Of course, beyond South Africa, we'll be looking elsewhere to find out which are the other countries that may be trying to move into the same industry, which of course our friends are trying to phase out. So that work is going to continue. And we will also be focusing on agribusiness to start destruction of habitats for wildlife. And some of this work, whereas we may not focus on it in Africa, but this work is going to be really our strong focus, especially in the Amazon, where soybean is being produced, of course, in habitats which are supposed to be for animals, where lots and lots of forests are being cleared in order to produce feed for wild animals. And I think this is where now the farming campaign and the wildlife campaign really become one. Next slide, please. Yes. So the second intervention area is innovative solutions. Because we believe we cannot tell people to abandon their business without demonstrating that there is a way out of it and there are alternatives. So we are committing that by 2030, we will redirect the use of wildlife and their habitats towards innovative and humane sustainable solutions so that wildlife-friendly products such as herbal alternatives and more ecologically sound tourism are promoted and they become the norm, and consumers can demand them. To this end, we've identified four what I would call key activity areas or strategies where we will shift demand so that people begin to demand those humane alternatives. And this is the work that we are likely going to be focusing on, especially in China, who are the main really demanders of consumers of traditional medicine, because we believe they have alternatives. And our research has indicated that actually if there are alternatives, people are willing to shift to those alternatives. We are working with a number of institutions, especially in China, to move people from consuming wildlife to consuming our alternatives. Of course, maybe there will be another organization which will say plants are sentient beings, don't exploit them. Yeah. And then, as I said, we will enable wildlife in a way and support tourism that is more humane. And to this end, we will be supporting those corporates, those institutions, those stakeholders that are willing to go the route of World Heritage Sites. We have piloted this in some countries, and we believe Africa has a potential actually where we can have some sites being declared as World Heritage Sites so that they become more attractive, they can be developed into more better tourism destinations where we can actually practice non-consumptive tourism. without necessarily extracting animals from the wild and taking them elsewhere. Like, say, in the United Arab Emirates, where currently we are setting up the biggest zoo in the world. And maybe soon, tourism will be moving from Kenya to those places where animals are now housed in big mega zoos or mega buildings. And then we will also promote practical solutions. And in this case, we are looking at, as Kenson said, we have not moved away from our disaster work. In the wildlife campaign, we are still looking at disaster, but only where it connects to our goal. So for instance, where corporates are causing exploitation of wild animals and results into animals being in a disaster situation, we will go in to intervene. And we'll use that as a case to demand that corporates need to end that kind of exploitation. So we will continue to do that emergence within the wildlife market. For instance, if fires in Brazil are caused by a corporate because they are producing soybean, then we will enter, we will tackle that issue around that angle. And then we'll also develop community-based habitat protection projects for Africa in the next 3 years. That one may not be our focus, but we are looking to tackle that especially in South America and India, where we'll be building on our existing work. Next slide. The third intervention area is what we have coined as a new deal for wildlife. This is a new area for us. I know there are many, we've had many such ideas, new deal for nature, new deal for this, new deal for children. But for us, we are saying a new deal for wildlife. And it's an area of work that we are developing currently. And we are saying that by 2030, we will develop people-powered campaigns, which will result in more governments, more institutions adopting protective policies for wild animals and their habitats. Which institutions are we looking at, or which global policies? For instance, we know institutions or agencies or mechanisms such as the Convention on Biological Diversity are some of the spaces where some of these things are entrenched at that strategic level. CITES level, we know that's where some of those things are entrenched. UNE and other spaces. So those are spaces we seek to influence to ensure that wildlife-friendly policies are enacted that do not impact negatively on wild animals. And of course, the example of UNEA 5.2 the other day, I think is one of those examples I can vividly give that is the direction we should be taking. Where at that strategic level, we must see commitment to animal welfare. And I also want to highlight that our current Africa animal strategy for animals, and of course the platform and the supportive platform for animal welfare. A number of times, whenever I look at that document, it's like I ask my question, where is wildlife in this? And I think many of you will agree with me that that's an area, maybe in the next revision of the strategy, maybe we need to look at some of those areas so that we align that commitment that has been made by UNEA with some of these strategic instruments that, like the Africa Animal Welfare Strategy. So in terms of this area of work, we will develop a roadmap and we'll identify really networks who will support our call for a new deal for wildlife, and we will work with the stakeholders like you to gather that support so that this whole concept of the new world for animals and the new deal for wildlife is entrenched in policies and legislation at the global level, but also at national level, and of course in other regional strategies and instruments. Last slides. When I was talking about the problem that we are confronting, I said that we have a mindset that we have a right to exploit these animals. So we have also identified an intervention which will be supportive of those 4 other interventions, 3 interventions that I've talked about, which are about animals. This is about changing mindsets. It's about mobilizing people to take action. And we are saying that by 2030, we want the dominant public narrative to shift so that wild animals are seen as sentient, they are seen as deserving to live in the wild.
Recording stopped.
That's not. I mean, stopped? That's not. Okay, sorry about that. So, in order to achieve change in those 3 intervention areas I've highlighted.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, so I said in order to address interventions, to achieve change in those 3 intervention areas, we need to shift mindsets, but we also to move along with the people. Therefore, we will be mobilizing supporters like you, we'll be mobilizing the general public, we'll be mobilizing corporates, we'll be mobilizing young people, so that we build a global movement, we build a continental movement that actually can champion this cause with us. That is why, at the beginning we said yes, we know we are not alone in this. We know together we shall be able to give lives, animals a better life, and we'll create a better world for animals. My next slide, as I conclude. So bringing all this together, this is the slide that my colleague Yamo said he can't read. But basically, that slide is a summary of all that I've been talking about. It articulates the problem, it articulates our vision, it articulates the 4 underlying causes of that problem and the drivers. It articulates the 3 intervention areas, that is the disruption of commercial exploitation, innovative solutions, and then the New Deal for animals. And then up there, it also articulates the 4 outcome areas, whereby the first outcome is about changing people's mindsets so that the dominant narrative becomes that wild animals have a right to live in the wild. And then the other one is about disrupting commercial exploitation. The third one is about sustainable solutions. And then the last one is a new deal for animals and really embedding this in national, regional, and global policies and laws. That's right. For 2022, we have come up with a number of projects because, yes, this is a 10-year strategy, and maybe it can be hard to really have a 10-year horizon. So what we have done, we have tried to develop our strategy into small bits. So we've developed 3-year projects, and of course for 2022 we are focusing on a few areas, which I believe will be the areas that you might immediately see opportunities where we might work together. We will build a case for support and map an engagement strategy for our New Deal work. That is work that is ongoing, that we are developing, and as I said, this is work that largely will be engaged with, largely with the policymakers. So that is the work around the New Deal, which we are developing and building as a starting point as we launch this strategy. And then we will also start to identify really some of these early pilots where we can engage wildlife protectors at the community level, and as I said, some of this work will largely be in South America, where we have previously done this kind of work. But as I said, it will also be challenging. Some of the deep-rooted practices around sustainable use, and one of the projects that we have identified is work around trophy hunting. I know when I talk about trophy hunting, especially my colleagues from the public sector fraternity, this is something that might not sit well with us, but we have said we will not be apologetic about this. For the next 10 years, we'll be focusing on this. It's a new area for us, but we believe we can walk along with you. We'll begin this work by looking at the SADC region, especially because we know that is what kind of the epicenter of trophy hunting, South Africa, Namibia, Zimbabwe, all those countries where trophy hunting is a mainstay. But we'll also try to connect our previous strategy with the current strategy. We will carry forward, for instance, our traditional medicine work, as I said, push to make sure the captive line breeding industry in South Africa is closed down, and we really make sure it does not emerge elsewhere. So for instance, if we hear KWS is about massaging an idea to start line farming and sell bonds to China, Vietnam, and Asia, we will come in, things like that. And then we will also continue to do our work in China and Vietnam, where we are working on closing down the bear industry, and we will also continue to work in Vietnam, in Thailand, to close down the elephant rides and things like that. This is not all. We also have work in entertainment, where we'll be trying to wrap up our work on dolphins, close down the dolphiniums, wherever we have been working. But also, we will be in other countries where we work. For instance, in the UK, in the US, in Canada, we'll also be tackling issues like trophy hunting, but we'll be working a lot with also some of the corporates in the shipping industries, make sure that we tackle some of those players in the value chain, be it exotic pets, be it fashion, be it trophy hunting, so that at the end of the day we are addressing the industry in a holistic way. For instance, in Australia, we'll be tackling crocodile farming. In Denmark, we'll be trying to make sure that they close down the main farms that are used to produce fur for fashion. The same thing with, I think, the UK and other places. So this is a real global strategy, and in each country, we identify a specific issue which matters in that part of the world, but everywhere our approach is the same, our campaigning is the same. It's through partnerships, it's through working with people like you. Next slide. How we'll deliver that? As I said, it's direct implementation ourselves. We will mobilize people power, but we also build networks through partners like you, where we don't have offices that can play that pivotal role in our new strategy. So we'll really be excited to hear from you. Where do you see opportunities for us to be able to take this strategy forward? And my last slide, I think. Yeah, thank you. And of course, I will welcome questions, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to make a disclosure here that Edith is not a vet. So she's very clear. I needed to clarify Dr. Yamo's speech because he's a vet. Thank you very much for that. Very, very clear, and we clearly get your message. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are running a little bit behind schedule. I was tempted many times to talk to the speakers, but I realized that the content they're giving us is critical, is the reason we're here. So kindly be patient with us. Now, we are moving quickly to the next step, whereby now this is an open session where we will try to elicit the opportunities we designed in this strategy. We now know what this strategy is about. I hope that you are, like I am, convinced that it is an excellent strategy that aims to safeguard the welfare of humanity and the environment through the protection of animals. Our purpose in life, ladies and gentlemen, is not to simply enjoy the heritage of nature. It includes being mindful enough to preserve it for the future generations that will come after us. Therefore, we have a moral obligation to live responsibly by being mindful about other creatures we share this planet with. We have a moral obligation to be mindful about the welfare of animals. Now, we have been told that the strategic plan for wild animal protection has two goals: to ensure farmed animals live good lives by transforming the global food system, and to stop wild animals being cruelly exploited as commodities by changing the systems that allow this. Among other things, wild animal protection strategic plan aims to address the deepening crisis facing animals around the world, both in the food systems and the exploitation of wild animals. In the strategic plan, wild animal protection recognizes that it cannot do this alone. Together, they say, we will change the way the world works to end animal cruelty and to stop suffering of the animals forever. We will build on our successful heritage of collaborating with others to create lasting change. This implies leveraging on change movers and galvanizing a movement of millions of people to become advocates for change. That is what they're calling people power. Of course, this will require providing the people with the evidence that protecting animal welfare enhances their own immediate and futuristic welfare. Wild animal protection sees opportunities in collaboration through its collaborators. You are key stakeholders. The wild animal protection is looking into for support to protect animals. And in you are diverse opportunities that wild animal protection can leverage on as it pursues its strategy. Wisely, wild animal protection states that we cannot look at food systems and wildlife trade in isolation because they are inextricably connected. Now, I am going to request feedback for a few people, and we'll begin with the Blood Lions. To introduce the Blood Lions, I give you the mission statement, which is to continue in our endeavors towards wildlife conservation and economic development wherever we operate across Africa. To continue supporting an ethical and responsible interaction with Africa's wilderness and wild animals. To continue promoting Africa as an authentic, wild, and rewarding tourism destination. So, Blood Lions, kindly let us know, now that we recognize wild animal protection, seize opportunities in partnering with you. What opportunities do you see in this strategy? We have very little time, so perhaps we'll tell us that in a minute or two.
With wild animal protection from since 2019. I was privileged to be part of the first engagement that took place in Nakuru National Park, where we learned more on wild animal protection, work in protection of endangered wild animals. We took part in the campaign of Parents Not Pets in increasing awareness. We also took part in a march in Nairobi, the streets of Nairobi, to increase awareness and including awareness on wildlife species such as our African lions and pangolins. We have also worked in a petition for ending illegal wildlife trade in Africa. We shall continue to work closely with wild animal protection in making sure our animals are well protected and their welfare.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, let's give a loud clap. The people on that table have not clapped. Please, let's clap for Phoebe. Thank you very much. Now, we have Dr. Kevin Osore, who is here to represent the Kenya Veterinary Association. I know that Dr. Kevin Osore is a veterinarian, very charismatic veterinarian, I know that. And the mission statement of the KVA is to facilitate development of animal resources industry in Kenya through setting standards for veterinary training institutions and registration and licensing of veterinary professionals, businesses, and institutions. Dr. Kevin Osore, normally as sharp as you are with your points, kindly, very briefly tell us the opportunities you see in this trust.
Thank you, Doc. I'll be a bit quick, as you say. So we've been partners for a long time. I think we've worked with all animal protection for a long time. What we've been focusing on has essentially been changing of perceptions among our members. So we want our members to focus more on animal welfare. I know most vets are going to focus on animal health and production, but we can't forget the fact that animal welfare contributes to good production and good animal health. So what we intend to do going forward, of course together with Wild Animal Protection, is to increase the awareness of, say, our members. So the vets know what they're doing, but can we work together to create a perception change among the public members? So for example, there are a lot of people who do not even know that carrying chicken on top of vehicles is an animal welfare related offense, for example. We even have police officers who do not know that is a big issue in animal welfare. So how can we create change in the perceptions together with Wild Animal Protection? The next issue is antimicrobial resistance. As vets, we face a lot of challenges because you're going to prescribe an antibiotic today, it doesn't work. The farmer will think the vet is not good. The farmer is not going to think the antibiotic doesn't work because the farmer doesn't know that. So how do we create perception changes through surveys, for example? How do we do research projects to make sure that the public is more aware of antimicrobial resistance as a big issue? As Dr. Yamo mentioned, we have a lot of superbugs going around. The public is not aware of that. So we intend to collaborate in terms of research, in terms of surveys, and so on to change that. Third, I think that is third. I talk too much, so I need to just slow myself down. Lobbying. Now we have the Animal Welfare and Protection Bill at the moment, 2019, which hasn't been passed yet. And we know normally the legislative process can be very slow. And the bills which are not of much interest to our parliamentarians can be gathering dust on the shelves. So how can we work together to push the bill to be enacted as soon as possible? Secondly, we know very well we don't have animal welfare regulations in Kenya. We have the VSVP Act, which provides for regulations. We have the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, which provides for regulations. But we do not have regulations that can help us implement and operationalize those acts. So can we work together going forward through lobbying and stakeholder meetings to get those regulations going forward? And of course, our constitution provides that the national government is going to be in charge of the welfare of the wild animals, and the county governments are going to be in charge of the domestic animals. But we haven't seen many counties creating laws that are going to operationalize this part of the constitution. So how can we work together? And that is what we're going to do through our branches, which are footprints in all the counties, to make sure that we push counties to create acts, bylaws that are going to make it easy for us to tackle the problems in animal welfare. And I think we'll share more as we go on because of a lack of time. But that is our focus today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And we need a loud clap for him. Doctor, let me correct you. You don't talk too much. People talk too much when they talk nonsense. I've never heard you talk nonsense. So, ladies and gentlemen, now as we move on, we have a very important stakeholder here. That is the media. Unfortunately, I don't have a specific mission statement for the media, but if you ask me, if I was one to make one for them, I would say, it would be to spread the power of optimism to societies through empowering people with information. So therefore, we have the privilege of having current hosts from media and social media, who is a media and social media influencer, to let us know what she thinks, what opportunities she finds from this strategy. Karen, please.
Thank you very much. I have a very short speech with me that I would like to share. Now, my late father once used to say, kindness develops empathy in our children. If our children learn to care about animals, they will learn to protect them and their habitat. So true to his word, my parents taught me that if I am gentle and respectful to animals, I am more likely to be respectable and with humans. My name is Karen Curry-McNoust. I'm a media personality who has worked for K24 TV, and I recently joined TV47 as their primetime news anchor. In an industry where a few journalists in Kenya report on animal welfare and conservation, I passionately chose to comment and educate the public on animal well-being, wildlife crime, or criminal activity involving animals. I've also been a proud vegetarian for 15 years. Now, around the world, the fight for human rights continues, for equality, justice, and freedom, all of which are underpinnings to a functional democracy. Alongside this critical movement, compassionate people and organizations are working to ensure that non-human animals are not left behind. What I like about World Animal Protection, among many other things, is that not only do they protect animals, but they also believe a sustainable future for the planet can only be achieved if both animals and people are part of the solution. They are active in more than 50 countries and work tirelessly with governments, local partners, animal welfare organizations, businesses, and communities to find practical ways to prevent animal suffering and cruelty worldwide. The necessity of this work is critical. As a media personality, I have more insight into the industry. However, I believe that journalism in Kenya has a long way to go in terms of speaking on behalf of animals. I agree that the media has changed how it covers climate issues, but I still believe that we can do better. And I see much room for growth. There are more resources out there now on how to cover animals and share their perspectives. People just need to write about it. I want to applaud World Animal Protection in this launch of their global strategy and reassure them of having my full support. Once again, I reiterate a commitment to working together with World Animal Protection to improve how the media in Kenya covers animal rights, both through my coverage and that of my colleagues in the industry. On a similar note, I promise to continue to use my position in the Kenyan media industry to create, improve, and sustain access by younger journalists interested in reporting on animal welfare. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you for clapping for her. I am reminded to remind us to continue sending messages of goodwill through the Twitter handle. Kindly please do that. And now we translate to the next level, where I don't know if is she in the room. Lucy, we have some messages from the audience online. Would you like to read a few, or would you like us to? Yeah.
Only to say that we have about 80 people online joining us.
You have a very soft voice, we can't hear you.
Okay, for the people who are online, about 80 of us, are online. And thank you for staying forth. We will run late. We will be here for about up to 1, so please do excuse us. We'll take just another 1 hour. This is for our online audience who we had informed that we'll finish this at 12. But thank you for staying with us. We have one comment back. Can I read that? From Tozi. Tozi
Zokufa, must be. Yeah.
Yes, Tozi. But she was actually saying he. Oh, okay, he. I told you. Oh yeah, Tozi. Thank you, Tozi, for joining us. This is Tozi Zokufa of Coalition of Africa Animal Welfare. He says this is a great presentation. We at Coalition of Africa Animal Welfare are looking forward to collaborating with wild animal protection in the near future. So Tozi, a lot of us who are online, thank you very much. We urge you to please continue sending your welfare messages on the chat box and also the comments section. Over to you, Baka.
Thank you very much. Tozi is a very strong champion for animal welfare from South Africa. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving to the point we're going to invite a few remarks from some of our partners. I don't know if Kenchik is in the house. Please, Kenchik.
Dr. Osore.
Dr. Osore.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we have another colleague here.
Good afternoon. My name is Makena. I'm the head of marketing at Kenship, but I'm representing our MD, Mr. Jim Toza. He was not able to attend this event. So I'll read out his speech. Ladies and gentlemen, as Kenship, we are glad to join World Animal Protection in the launch of their global strategy for 2021 to 2030. For a long time now, World Animal Protection has been a trusted partner as we walk the journey of improving the animal welfare standards in the country. To this date, with the help of World Animal Protection, Kenshik has led the way in formulating policies and commitments in animal welfare and food safety. These policies, which we shall soon launch publicly, include our animal welfare policy, and animal welfare commitment, antimicrobial usage policy, food safety policy, waste and emissions policy, environmental enrichment guidelines, among others. In addition, Kenshik, the largest poultry company in East and Central Africa, has implemented international animal welfare standards, including provision of sufficient patches, toys, and other packing objects, and creating an environment that emphasizes positive welfare for our birds by monitoring the light levels, concentrations, humidity, temperature, air quality, among others. Our processing plant has acquired the FSSC 22000 certification, version 5.1, the highest global level for food processors, and our in-house laboratory, the only one of its kind in East Africa, has been ISO 17025 certified for the last 5 years. Both these international certifications ensure that our guarantee for safe food from our farm to your family is assured. Our focus is to lead the way in Africa, and by doing so, bring along other producers to better the welfare of animals in our care and safety of our food systems. Going forward, we hope to collaborate further with World Animal Protection to help other producers in Kenya improve the animal welfare standards. Kenshik is ready and willing to use our experience to assist the industry in this regard. Furthermore, we look forward to working with World Animal Protection to develop an animal welfare labeling scheme in Kenya that would allow consumers a selection of animal products raised in accordance with these high animal welfare standards. Over and above we want to ensure that our operations are sustainable by working towards a net energy producer and a carbon neutral business, and ramping up our social impact to benefit more communities in our sphere of influence. Finally, we seek to educate consumers on the importance of animal welfare and other issues of global importance, such as antimicrobial resistant climate change and other forms of sustainable agriculture. It is prudent that we do not forget that better animal welfare equals better animal health and better production and overall performance. It is equally important that we strive to ensure that animals live a life worth living, because as a great man once said, you can judge a man's true character by the way he treats animals. We wish World Animal Protection all the best as you begin this part of your journey, and we commit to work with you in realizing the animal welfare agenda for the world and Kenya to be specific. Thank you very much.
Let's have a loud clap for her. Thank you very much, Makena. Thank you very much, Makena. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the easiest approaches in communication is through theater. And so we invite the Kenya National Theatre to tell us something. And that Kenya National Theatre, I can request KWS to get ready.
Thank you. Yeah, entertainment has always been a major element in every other forum, be it events, workshops, and seminars. And that being my background, I, Udomo Kennedy from Kenya Cultural Center incorporating Kenya National Theatre, would love to start by saying that the concept of using artistic expressions to advocate for animal protection has a long historical path which can be described as a theatrical marriage between World Animal Protection and Kenya Cultural Center, incorporating the Kenya National Theatre, or rather KNT, through PAL or Poetry After Lunch, an event that runs there every Thursday of the week. This partnership has always been boosted by PAL, an inspirational platform where young artists get their weekly trainings on thematic content development, which also embraces lyrical compositions on the do's and don'ts that communities need to accept to ensure that animals and birds, both domestic and wild, get a fair share of care from the human race. Our main objective has always pointed at nurturing young artists to be ambassadors of moral sanity, which largely brackets building the trust between humans and animals. It is through this initiative that we have done quite a number of projects in partnership with World Animal Protection Africa that have not only seen artists get rewarded and awarded for the exemplary thematic pieces they present during the organization's campaigns, but have also upgraded the creative status from being performing artists to becoming local tourists as international expeditions await. Mombasa was great during the AMR award ceremony. I hope you all remember. It is notable that many times we have volunteered our artistic giftings in animal welfare campaigns that have always defined our entity as a committed and reliable partner of work within and without all the platforms that have always enjoyed our entertaining yet educative presentations. And through our commitment and persistence to get to know how well animals are treated, we have come to realize that hunting dogs are in danger. Other than being given heavy doses of marijuana mixed with pepper to keep them aggressive in the hunting fields, not enough care is extended to their well-being as great messengers augmenting the human life support system. So Dr. Yamu, you're right to say that food revolution should come in there. Derived from this analysis, I'd love to summarize by requesting World Animal Protection to kindly support Palsea artists in Luo Nyanza who are already campaigning against this vice to achieve their dream in inspiring communities to embrace a fair treatment of hunting dogs. Allow me therefore to wind up by thoroughly thanking Madam Lucy Onjiku, Chief Communication Officer, and Tennyson Williams, Director of Art Africa, for always choosing us to build a new world for both wild and domestic birds and animals. God bless World Africa Protection Africa. God bless PAL Kenya Cultural Center. God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. That's a very good. I write some poetry, but I don't speak like a poet. I speak like one. Thank you very much. And next, we are going to have Dr. Isaac Lekolol, who is the head of the Veterinary Services Department at KWS, representing the director. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Waka. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon on behalf of our Director General who could not make it, with my colleague Solomon Chado, who is also a specialist in terms of CITES, and I've heard of a lot of CITES being mentioned this morning. Just to start by a quote from one Mahatma Gandhi, I'm sure all of you know about him. He said, the greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated, and that is what I think we are all about here today. For those of us who have not interacted with KWS Service, I'll just give maybe a brief introductory remarks or just a brief introduction of the organization. KWS Service conserves and manages Kenya's wildlife for the Kenyan people and the world. It is a state corporation that was established by an Act of Parliament, Cap 376, and now repealed by the Wildlife Conservation and Management Act of 2013. It was given the mandate to conserve and manage wildlife in Kenya and to enforce related laws and regulations. Our vision is to save the last great species and places on earth for humanity. Our mission statement states to sustainably conserve, manage and enhance Kenya's wildlife, its habitats, and provide a wide range of public uses in collaboration with stakeholders for posterity. And I believe World Animal Protection therefore plays a key role as one of the stakeholders that we value as a partner, and I think it comes greatly when going through this strategic plan that we feature very closely under the goal 2 of the strategic plan. Our wildlife forms part of Kenya's biodiversity and heritage. It is an important source of tourism resource that contributes to a great extent to the Kenyan GDP. And for those of us who have looked at wildlife and the way it generates revenue to the country, we could say it is an elastic kind of resource. We have the wildlife, and most of the tourists that we get to Kenya they come on safari tourism. They visit our parks, they look at the wildlife, they pay for that, but they do not take that wildlife with them. So it is still available for posterity. Wildlife conservation faces various challenges, such as human-wildlife conflict, and in today's morning's talks, we've heard about the human population. Kenya at independence, I think, had a population of about 7 million. Currently, we are approaching about 50 million. The Kenyan area is about 580,000 square kilometers. That was the same kind of square kilometers that Kenya occupied at independence. We've not increased an acre to our land, but we've increased our population 7-fold. So that has created a lot of pressure on the normal wildlife ranges, and we've done cultivation because we need to feed our people. We've done a lot in terms of livestock production, and these two go hand in hand in trying to get more land for these kind of ventures. And to do that, we've almost taken over the last what we consider to be wildlife ranging areas. This has created a lot of conflicts, and with that conflict, animals or wildlife tend to be the ones to grant the effects. When they go to raid the livestock, we end up with animals getting injured, and that is one of our main concerns as the wildlife area. In other areas, we've seen great and the great reach quickly schemes that are continuing to interfere with animal welfare. And this one comes through poaching for trophies and sometimes poaching for bushmeat. We have been at the forefront to try and take care of this, just to try and see that we don't recur poaching, and also ensure that our wildlife are safe wherever they are. There's a lot of pressure on grazing or growers, a lot of availability for our wildlife, and that is basically because of the increase in the livestock production sector, where there's a lot of competition between livestock and also wildlife. So as Kenya Wildlife Service, we try to engage communities and also the other sectors, government sectors, to ensure that land use is set aside for all the ventures that put us together. So areas that need to be for wildlife should be set aside for that. And it is my appeal that going forward with the support of maybe WAP and all of you, we should try and see that we can win some more space for wildlife in our country. Illegal keeping and illegal trade of wildlife has also resulted in a lot of animal welfare issues, because most of these people who undertake these activities, they do not have the licenses, so they keep these animals in very poor conditions, in dark rooms, in split cages, thus interfering with welfare of these animals. Some of our animals are persecuted in various areas, basically because of certain myths that have never been proven. Just to mention a few, the owls, they do a lot of great to these environments. They keep our environment clean. They take care of some of the species that we could consider vermins. But for some of us, when you see an owl, you say it's bad luck, bad omen. So they've been persecuted in many areas. Other animals that have been persecuted for various reasons are hyenas. And for those of you who do not know, the hyenas are also called the sanitary police. Without the hyenas, we'll be having lots of issues within our environment. We'll have a lot of pollution in terms of waste from dead, from the carcasses that our animals have died from other causes. And those could be cases that could propagate disease that spread in various areas. Sorry, my notes are a bit disjointed. So when you come to animal welfare, we say that animal welfare cannot be complete if they are not allowed, if animals are not allowed to enjoy the 5 freedoms. I think we talked about the 5 freedoms this morning, and Kenya Wildlife Service plays a key role in ensuring that the 5 freedoms are taken care of. One of my appeals this morning, this afternoon, is in terms of the first freedom. That is the freedom from hunger and thirst. For all of you who have been interacting with the current or ongoing news, you'll notice that in the northern parts of the country, we've had the prolonged drought that has really devastated some of the wider populations. They are in need of feeds and also water. As Kenya Wildlife Service, we try to support the communities and also interact with them. And we are trying to conduct maybe some areas, water tracking, just to ensure that that some of these animals get water, but we do not have the financial support that we so desire so as to ensure that all these animals are taken care of. So, but the good thing we've had is the communities coming in, they're taking their position in terms of animal welfare, and they're providing a key role in terms of providing manpower to do this kind of take this kind of activities. So we are seeing communities responding positively, especially in the northern parts of the country, and this is a very good thing, and that I encourage most of you to also support us in that front. As a government agency responsible for wildlife health and welfare, we have teams around the country to ensure that wildlife enjoy their freedom from discomfort. So we have an inspectorate team that does checks on, especially for those animals that are kept in captivity. And we also do the permitting and licensing. So if we are not doing the right things, cannabis can come in and remove the permits or withdraw the permit, and also withdraw the animal species that you're keeping if you're not keeping them in good or fair animal welfare conditions. For animals that have to confine for any reason, mostly it's because of they have been orphaned, because of other reasons. The mothers could have died from poaching, they could have died from natural causes, and they cannot survive on their own in the wild. And so we give them a second chance to live, and that's when we need to keep these animals sometimes in captivity. Some of the animals are seriously injured, they cannot survive on their own, and sometimes we need to put them in captivity, and unfortunately for most of them they cannot go out to the wild. So when they're kept in captivity, then we need to ensure that all the right conditions are set and are available. So Kenya Wildlife Service has a dedicated pool of veterinarians across the country. We have 8 mobile veterinary units that are situated and they considered in areas that are considered to be most at risk of interfering with freedom from pain, injury, and disease. So these are the hotspots that we have considered to check around the country. We've seen that is the areas with high wildlife numbers and high human-wildlife interactions. These are the areas that we set our teams, just so that they can do a very quick response in terms of attending to animals with injuries or even disease. As a service, we have a department that educates communities and landowners on land use systems. And I urge all of you to be ambassadors of wildlife conservation, to join hands with us for a greater future where animal welfare is given the attention that it deserves. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asante Sana. Thank you for that brief. Next on line, we are going to have Julian Nyamapachito. Julian Nyamapachito, who will be representing the director of REACT, and that's Dr. Matthew Mpundu. I hope I pronounced your name right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mbaka, and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Julian Nyamapachito, as you rightfully said, the very difficult last name, and I'm a program manager at REACT Africa. I'll offer brief remarks on behalf of our director, who sends his apologies, Dr. Matthew Mpundu. And REACT is Action on Antibiotic Resistance, and we are a global network with a goal to be a global catalyst, advocating and stimulating for global engagement on antimicrobial resistance by collaborating with a broad range of organizations, including wild animal protection, individuals, and in Africa particularly, we support countries in developing and also implementation of the antimicrobial resistance national action plans. And as we might be aware, and as highlighted by a number of the previous speakers, antibiotic resistance is a significant current global health threat to public health, food security, and development today. Just at the start of this year, there was an estimate of 1.27 million deaths globally that were actually attributed to antibiotic resistance bacterial infections in 2019. This is according to the Global Research on Antimicrobial Resistance, a project, the GRAM reports that was published earlier this year in Lancet. And this global health threat is actually multi-sectorial. It's a problem that requires us to look at it with a One Health approach. I think the previous speakers have mentioned the need to ensure that all sectors are included, including human health, the animal sector, food production sector, and the environment as well. There's been an increase in the misuse and overuse of antimicrobials in the animal sector. And the World Animal Protection has actually been very instrumental and an active partner in the fight against AMR in the African region. There are a number of studies that World Animal Protection has done, and this has actually helped in providing some data in a region where I'm sure you all agree that there is a lot of paucity of data in the African region. For example, the study that was done here in Kenya, I think Dr. Yamo mentioned it in his presentation, where there was some data that was retrieved from 6 counties in the country in 2020, and that showed the high prevalence of bacterial contaminants in pork and chicken samples. And such studies are important in raising awareness and also empowering consumers, who are very key stakeholders in antimicrobial resistance. Because if people understand now that what I'm taking in, what I'm eating, really will then impact on my health, then it is good. So we applaud the World Animal Protection for actually embarking on such studies. The video played at the start of this session was really an eye-opener on the animal welfare issues, and the presentations really showed that scientific evidence shows that animal welfare issues affect human health, including how factory farming impacts on antibiotic resistance. World Animal Protection has partnered with REACT Africa in a number of activities to synergize efforts. And Dr. Victor Yamo has been quite instrumental in imparting knowledge on sustainable food systems and food safety issues in the work that we are doing targeting the youth in Africa, the tertiary level university students. So he has been very instrumental in attending most of our webinars where we are focusing on antimicrobial resistance and sustainable food systems. Congratulations on launching the new global strategy today, A New World for Animals. And REACT Africa recognizes World Animal Protection as a very important stakeholder in curbing AMR. And we are looking forward to continuing partnering with the World Animal Protection in any future opportunities. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Julian. Thank you very much. Please pass our gratitude to Dr. Mpundu. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the next gentleman who is going to speak to us is a reflection of the African spirit. My experience with the African Network for Animal Welfare and the Africa Office of World Animal Protection is that they work in a lot of synergy. This is a message that reminds us that our common interest is African community, the African community of animals and the people. So if we work together, we're doing better. And he always likes saying, we We are stronger together. Please, let's hear that from you. Let's hear from you, sir. His name is Mr. Josephat Kisui Gonyo. He's the Executive Director of the African Network for Animal Welfare.
Thank you, Dr. Mbaka. You're always so very kind. Tell your neighbor, we're better together. And you look wonderful. Yeah, the second one is not in the script. That one is from me. African Network for Animal Welfare is very proud of wild protection for animals. Wild animal protection. For impacting animal welfare organization. So very, very proud of Tennyson Williams and his team. And today, ANO is celebrating with you the launch of your global strategy. Now, wild animal protection understands so well the fact that we are better together. And that's why they have called us today here to global. That is to translate their global strategy to our local environments. And that said, I see two opportunities in translating this global strategy. One of them is the Africa Animal Welfare Action Conference. This conference is held every year and has been moving from country to country. And it is hosted by UNEP, Africa Union, Inter-Africa Bureau for Animal Resources, and Africa Network for Animal Welfare. And I'm so delighted to say that wild animal protection is in the organizing committee of this conference and has been a close collaborator. We are better together. And let me mention that this conference in 2019, it was held in Addis Ababa, and it is the one that backed the resolution that Yamo mentioned. And that is the Animal Welfare, Environment, and Sustainable Development Nexus resolution. So that is the first opportunity. The second opportunity, of course, is the resolution. That resolution is, in a way, expected to also address the three planetary crises. That is climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And this strategy that wild animal protection has launched today, or is about to launch, I think we just about to. It was requested by the delegates. A lot of consultations took place, and Tennyson was one of those people who gave serious input that shaped the strategy that eventually was driven by 7 governments. That is Ghana, Ethiopia, Burkina Faso, Senegal, DRC, South Sudan, and Pakistan. And those are the governments that really moved the resolution forward to they sponsored the resolution to get it sponsored. And of course, wild animal protection played a key role, technically, as you know, to of the government. And yes, let me also recognize AU-IBA. You know, they played a very key role in that as a joint secretariat of AU-IBA, World Federation for Animals, and Africa Network for Animal Welfare. A lot has been talked about, and I want also to just quip that the Bible is very key in the work that World Animal Protection is doing, and all of us in animal welfare. In Proverbs 12:10, it says, "A righteous man is kind to his animals, while the masses of the wicked is cruel." This is the seriousness that God looks at the whole issue of animals and animal welfare. And I believe our colleagues who are in other faiths like Islam, there is actually a lot also about animals and how we should treat animals well in their faith. So thank you once again, everyone, and I end by saying congratulations to the World Animal Protection for the launch of this strategy that will be a game changer globally.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gordon. Let us kindly give him an organized clap. Don't say you don't clap, it's your time. That's for him. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, World Animal Protection is a global organization. As it sits here, it's in Africa. But as we sit here, we are hosted by the government of Kenya. And so that's why we are inviting the Director of Veterinary Services, represented by Dr. Jane Juguna, to give us her remarks. And then after that, I hope the poet is getting ready to show us something theatrical. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Jane Juguna. I'm in charge of animal welfare, communication, and veterinary advisory services. All protocols observed. I'm representing the Director of Veterinary Services, Kenya. So I'm here to represent the government of Kenya. One thing I'm happy about, I have the pleasure to bring the remarks of the Director, who would have been here with us, but due to some commitments, he was not with us. But I hope you accept his greetings. And as we talk about animal welfare, you find that all matters of animal health, public health, veterinary public health, and animal welfare, according to the Constitution and the government order paper, are in the domain of the Directorate of Veterinary Services. Our mission is to have healthy, productive animal resource that contributes to the sustainable economic development and social welfare in Kenya. Our mandate is to safeguard animal and animal health, improve animal welfare, increase animal resource productivity, and then ensure safe and high quality animals and their products to facilitate food security domestic and international trade. So you can see from there that animal welfare is part of our mission, and it's very key as we are delivering our services. As on behalf of the Directorate of Veterinary Services, let me take this opportunity to congratulate World Animal Protection Society on this auspicious occasion as they launched the global strategy which is meant to safeguard the welfare of all animals. This is a great milestone that you have achieved through hard work and the passion that you have for making sure that our animals enjoy the 5 freedoms as envisaged in the OIE Code of Terrestrial Animals, which include the 5 freedoms. I had one of our presenter saying that he might not be able to talk about the 5 freedoms and would want us to go and look for them, but I have them here. So for the benefit of those who have not looked at them, I'll read them. One is freedom to hunger. The other one is to hunger, thirst, and malnutrition. Freedom from fear and distress. Freedom from physical and thermal discomfort. Freedom from pain, injury, and disease. And freedom to express normal behavior and patterns of animals. Animals have suffered for long as people regard them as lesser human beings. As lesser beings, the people have not conceptualized that animals also should be treated with love because they also have feelings. I sometimes imagine the dog which guards you. And the first thing that it does when you are alive, you can see the hug that you receive in that compound. Meaning they also love. They also feel pain. They are also happy. You can see them jumping around. They also recognize you. That's why you see them wagging the tail. So you can imagine all those feelings and then you start inflicting pain on them. Even cows, when they see the owner, they recognize the owner. And you can see the way they react. So they also feel, they have emotions like the ones we have. So the minutes that we do not look after them, you find that we are actually not also looking after ourselves because they also make us happy. So when the animals are not happy, the human beings are not also happy. When we don't look at animals in the best way possible, through proper ventilation, through proper feeding, through proper watering, you find that as we have the previous speakers have said, we use a lot of antibiotics. These antibiotics get to the food chain. The minute they get to the food chain, you find that currently now we are having a high level of antimicrobial resistance, such that the doctors are trying to treat some of the common diseases, and the birds are not now reacting to the antibiotics that are there. For those people who have been in the field, especially the clinicians, I've been one of them before I came to the headquarters, you try to treat mastitis and you just cannot. And then, even if you take them for what we call culture and sensitivity, you find that there are no drugs that can actually kill those bacteria. So it has become a problem. It's actually an economical problem to the farmer, and it's also a problem to us because there is this cross infection between animals. Right now we are talking of the issue of One Health, the One Health concept, whereby we now want to work together. We have also now put the environment together. In fact, right now we are not just talking about DBS and EMS. The last meetings that we have been having, we have also been having representatives from KWS and representatives from environment, so that we can try to tackle the problems that we are having. So, the minute we look after these animals, we find that we are also looking after our health. So it is important that the welfare of animals is put into perspective whenever we are out there trying to make our living. In the whole industry, when we should look at that industry with an eye of animal health. The whole livestock industry, the environment, and the whole concept. There is this verse that I had also quoted, which actually, I remember when I was in the field, it was my reading verse. I had actually printed it and put it in my office for all to see why I'm so passionate about animals. As the previous presenter had said, Proverbs chapter 12 and verse 10. It says, the righteous care for the needs of the animals, but the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel. So, as we care for the animals, we are actually fulfilling a God assignment. The assignment that we are doing, if you are a Christian, the minute you care about animals, actually you're just fulfilling your purpose here on earth. And you will be asked when you are taking your scorecard, did you take care of these animals? How did you take care of them? You find that the Directorate of Veterinary Services will partner. We have partnered before. We are going to partner with World Animal Protection. I've seen during the presentation that you require the government, because some of the things that you want to do will require legislation. They will require policies. They will require strategies. They will require regulations. I want to promise you here, we know that the Animal Protection Bill is almost in the final stages. It's only that we are waiting for it to go to Parliament. And I urge you, please help us to look so that it is released, because the minute it is enacted, we will now be able to develop the regulations. Because for you to develop the regulations, you have to anchor it into an act of Parliament. So we are waiting for it to be released. I am the one in charge, and so immediately it is enacted, I'll invite all the stakeholders, and we'll sit down and now develop regulations which now we are going to use to implement. So I promise you, as government, that one we are waiting, and we are going to work together in this journey in order to protect the welfare of all the animals. So when you are implementing the strategy, we are going to collaborate. Don't leave us behind. You can see Dr. Yamo is there, he's smiling, he knows I'm just a call away, and we talk quite often, and my office is open, the director's office is open. When you see me, you see the director, because I am his ambassador. Thank you, and God bless you.
Hey, Serikali means longer term. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Dr. Jogona, for what you have told us. And there's something very important she has said about the policies, about the legislations and all that. And there is a very key reason why we allowed the DVS to speak just before the Kenya Veterinary Board. There's a message we want to send here. The Kenya Veterinary Board regulates animal welfare and even regulates the DVS. So we'd like to have at least a word of greeting from the CEO of the Kenya Veterinary Board. He's in the house, Dr. Edra Fraga. Please. Dr. Edra Fraga is normally very direct. He takes a minute. You wait and see. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Dr. Moka is my former chair at the board, so I hold him with a lot of esteem. Now, what I want to say is that it was said here that animal welfare is a collaborative efforts which require each and every player to play their role for us to have ultimate results. So I would rather start by saying what we do at the Kenya Veterinary Board in this regard. So my name is Indra Fragma. I'm the current CEO of Kenya Veterinary Board. Let me start by saying that one of our functions at the board is actually to regulate the veterinary practices and education. So in this regard, I also want to say that animal welfare, according to the law, and this is the law which regulates the veterinary practices. Allow me to mention it fully: Veterinary Surgeons and the Veterinary Professionals Act of 2011. Animal welfare is a veterinary practice. Now, what this means that, and it has been alluded here again by one of the speakers, that you start with welfare and then you go to health. So, to connect those two together, and according to the act that I've talked about, then animal welfare actually should be, activities, animal welfare activities, according to the law, should be headed by somebody who is conversant, who is trained in animal health, so that is the ultimate goal we want to achieve. Now, what I want to say is that at World Animal Protection, I want to commend the administration therein, because I think they are one of them. They have animal health components in their activities, which, according to the law, we have given the license at Kenya Veterinary Board. We oversee the activities, and we have not had any issues, in the performance of the animal welfare activities, because they follow the law as much as possible. Now, when it comes to making these animal welfare issues have an impact, it is important that we understand the collaborative efforts which we have to do together. Now, at the Kenya Veterinary Board, we have already developed a curriculum to be used in the training institutions, the institutions that train animal health and veterinary medicine. And the other day we had a meeting with Osorio and his team at court, and I want to echo what somebody said in that meeting. He said, yes, you are talking about animal welfare in the animal health training institutions, but there are other agents, government agents, which also should know about this animal welfare. And in fact, these are not my words, Osorio bear me witness. They talked about the judiciary. The CEO of Workers also talked about it. They talked about, the law enforcement agencies. And their request is not my request. Their request was that if the organizations dealing with the animal welfare can come together, they would have more voice. CEO of ANO has alluded to the same, so I'm just repeating what has been said. So, I am also aware there was an association called AWAKE, Animal Welfare Association of Kenya, which was bringing together all the animal welfare associations. In my view, this one could be a very big voice in animal welfare, because they will be talking in terms of all the animal welfare issues collectively, and it will not now be associated with
organizations or institutions or something like that. And this one also translate, or move the discussions we have here in the boardrooms to the field and address some of the pertinent issues that really ought not to be there. You agree that I want to be excused to mention about especially transportation of animals. I don't know why that one should actually be a problem now, but it's still an issue, and the facts are very clear. I don't know why it has not. We have not been able to, to overcome this one, because the facts are very clear. We have the personnel. We have where these animals come from. We have where they are going. We have the law enforcement agencies who are willing to assist. So maybe I should be assisted in knowing where is the problem. Because I think what the problem, according to me, is just management part of it, so that we are able to overcome this. So let me say that let me not continue beyond there. But my view strongly is to feel that if we have an association, we can possibly point in all those issues, and then they can now be translated into practically into the field, so that at the end of the day, we see results. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bravo. Let's have a loud clap for the regulator. Thank you very much for those great words. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for some entertainment. Lucy, where is our entertainer?
Yes, we have our team here.
Need to get entertained. I'm sure they will pull out, these are poets, right? Yes. They are going to pull out tears and smiles from our faces. Would you like one point?
Yeah, how are you doing, guys? Wazejipigeni makofi, mmengojea ni sahihi. So the song I'm going to sing inaitwa Say No to Antibiotics. So that is the chorus, the line. But there's a rule to sing in this song. Mkono moja tu ya right namna hii. Because it's like an anthem and appeal, alright? DJ, are you ready? Yeah, ready when you're ready.
Where are you ready?
Yeah. Antibiotics. Antibiotics. Pull up the volume. Yeah. Now listen. Antibiotics are essential medicines for treating bacterial infections, but are losing their effectiveness at an increasing rate. Bacteria can adapt and find ways to survive. They become resistant. Say no to the use of antibiotics. 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 Yeah, I know them with care.
We are living in changing times. As much as you want change, ask yourself, are you adding or subtracting or multiplying the times you're going to live in this world? Well, sometimes back, diseases like pneumonia in human, arthritis in cattle, rabies in dogs used to kill. But now, you are using antibiotic therapy. Anti-parasite, chronic collateral damage, related to global health, food security, and development trade. Since the treatable diseases have become untreatable, the antibiotics which used to treat have been treated and become less
tafadhali tupate sauti kidogo. You want the message to get through, right? Yeah. So my name is Kainamix and he's friends with the poet. Yeah, I do music, he does poetry. We fuse it to get the message home. Do you like it? Yeah. Yeah, one more time. Antibiotics, antibiotics. Yeah, thank you. Antibiotics are essential medicines for treating bacterial infections, but are losing their effectiveness at an increasing rate. Bacteria can adapt and find ways to survive. They become resistant. They become resistant. Say no to all use of antibiotics. Say no to all use of antibiotics. Yeah. Say no to all use of antibiotics. Say no to all use of antibiotics. Yeah. Handle them with care.
Handle them with care. We are living in changing times. As much as you want change, ask yourself, are you adding or subtracting or multiplying the times you're going to live in this world? But some time back, diseases like pneumonia in human, anthrax in cattle, rabies in dogs used to kill. Now, the people are using antibiotics therapy. But inside, chronic collapse has become the biggest threat to global health, food security, and development today. Since the treatable disease have become untreatable in this form, the antibiotics which used to treat have been treated and become less effective, leading to long hospital stays, higher medical costs, and increased mortality both in human and animals. Now in this case, who is the animal? Ask yourself that question. Before you kick the bucket, look at the handle. Handle with care.
Say no to the use of antibiotics. Yeah. Say no to the use of antibiotics. Yeah. Say no to the use of antibiotics. Say no to the use of antibiotics. Yeah. Handle them with care.
Follow the doctor's prescription.
Handle them with care. Handle them with care. Yeah. Handle them with care. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for entertaining us. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are going towards the tail end of this exercise. And now we are going to the most exciting part of this exercise. We want to launch the strategy, and since all of us cannot fit there, we are going to ask a few of us to represent us. The one representing the chief guest is Professor Robasha from the AU IBA. And of course, he will receive that from the African Director for Animal Welfare. He will receive that sort to launch it. But to escort them, may we please have Lucy Wajiko. Lucy, can you just come up here? May we have Dr. Yamo, Dr. Victor Yamo, Edith, Karen Host, Dr. Kennedy Osori, Ms. Pauline Balu. May we have Madam McKenna from Kinshik. May we have that gentleman with a poetic voice from Kenya National Theatre, and Dr. Nicolol. Madam Julian Nyamupa Chitu, Mr. Jos Gonyo. We have the director, Dr. Jane Juguna, Dr. Idrof Rawa. Dr. Idrof Rawa, please. And this you're going to be taken through this with the guidance of.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maka. So friends, we are at the climax of today's event, as Maka has informed us. And we are honored by the presence of AUIBA, represented here right now by Professor James Wabacha. I can assure you that the acting director for AUIBA has made no mistake in nominating Professor Wabacha to represent such an important institution to perform this honorable task for us. I may not be the best person placed to say anything about Professor Wabacha, but all I know for a fact is that the humility you see in him should not be mistaken for a weakness. He is such a humble man to the extent that perhaps AUIBA will not be what it is as I know it if it did not have the likes of Professor Wabacha in its portfolio of professionals. Professor, we are humbled. So can I request you to please come to where I am standing? And hidden underneath this cloth is something that will be most honored if you can refer to in performing the launch that we are about to witness. And following that, this which I'm having on my left hand will be available to people who are present here, because indeed they represent the text. So we are humbled. The moment is now, the moment is here, and I have the singular honor and privilege to invite Professor Wabacha, representing the African Union Inter-Africa Bureau for Animal Resources, to do us the honor in launching a document. Please, can you join us? Professor will be here. Professor will be here. Can he move? Okay. If it can cause, if it will cause problem, I think Professor can stand there. Yes. Yes. And please, some of you come to this side. Dorothy, Karibu this side. Something last one. Not to the extent that it scares us out of this
Please organize us in such a manner that you're sure that you can capture.
We're learning all the time. The experts in launching documents are here with us. So they will take us through. You never stop learning. It is. So thank you for reminding us. I cannot agree with you more. I'm just appealing to the cameras and the media. All of these that are happening, you did not capture it elsewhere, not here. All right, so let's progress. We've been guided, and as I was saying, let me hand over the microphone to the chief lunch.
Tennyson, I'm pleased on behalf of the director, Dr. Nick Mwamba, to launch our strategic plan.
It's too crowded.
And a new world for animals. A strategic plan for all animal protection 2021-2030, where our animals will experience a new world where cruelty will be no more. Congratulations to all animal protection.
Recording stopped.
Thank you. Please. Don't go yet. Don't get around the table with the document in your hands. Okay. Count people to be released from prison. You see yourself as a prisoner. Yes. Okay. The ladies, please have a seat. Please. Please.
I can't be at the edge.
You want animal business.